In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. Live and direct right here from the the sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. That is always spelled with a K here in the saloon. I am 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast. That would be the Bill Mill, the Capitol building at 10th and L Street, sitting in all its decrepit nature, where late at night you can hear the death of common sense in Sacramento, California. And also when I leave the studio, you can smell the stench of brimstone and sulfur from the evil therein. You got a belly up to the bar, we've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back tonight. It is September 26th, the year of our Lord 2019. Fluffy is going to be your bartender tonight. He pours with the best of them. The lava lamp is in fact lighted to my right, your left, and I got to tell you this. We don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred, the speech is free, but the booze is not. All we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. We have got a fabulous show for you tonight. In the first hour, live from South Carolina, it's David Weigel. In the second hour, articles from Victor Davis Hanson, Kurt Schlichter, and have I got some audio cuts for you and a great song. A fabulous song. It is going to be a fabulous show. Now, he's on hold right now, but actually you'll be able to hear him in just 1 second. Tonight, we have another first here in the saloon. Never before have I interviewed a candidate for United States Senate, this time for 2020. Now, as with many of my recent guests, I became aware of this man via social media on the internet. Now, these are really interesting times, and they make for a great and varied means of contacting new and unique people for the show. So tonight's show is another in my continuing series of providing candidates for various political offices the opportunity to speak at length about their campaigns and platforms. And we'll soon be speaking to David Weigel, 2020 Republican candidate for U.S. Senate from South Carolina. He is running directly against incumbent Senator Lindsey Graham. That shows major testicular fortitude in my estimation right there. And as David Weigel indicates on his social media, he is the anti-Graham. As you might expect, we'll get into a number of issues tonight, as I am wont to do when I speak to guests here in the saloon. And that's why I love having a lengthy period of time to talk to people, because you can really get into what motivates folks, get into their heads, and discover what they're all about. So why wait? Let's do that right now. I would like to welcome David Weigel into the saloon for the very first time. Good evening, sir, and thank you very kindly for accepting the invitation to be here tonight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on the air. I would not fly into California right now because I would not be welcome, because my guns would not be welcome. So I'm sorry that you're behind enemy lines, but I'm glad to have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you very kindly. First, where are my manners? I want to thank you for staying up so late because this is rote. There's already folks in chat. Welcome to Jack, Wendy, Simone. I want to say thank you for staying up so late because, as everybody here in the saloon knows, as a regular listener and viewer knows, because I'm simulcasting on Facebook and YouTube, most of my guests are from the East Coast, and thusly they stay up late to do so. So thank you, David Weigel, for doing that for us tonight, sir. I really appreciate the late time that you're taking because it's 8:05 here, so it's 11:05 way over on the right coast. So thank you, sir, for that too.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk with everyone about these important issues. And you know what? It's 11 o'clock now on the East Coast, but you know what? It's never a bad time to talk about liberty.
Excellent. Oh, I like that already. Okay, I was provided a bit of a CV for you by Coles Kazmarski, who is your media relations coordinator. And it says this, and we'll get into much more than this. It says, David's love of country and commitment to securing American liberty for future generations was instilled at an early age by his family with its long history of military service. He signed his enlistment contract for the United States Marine Corps at the young age of 17. We'll get into that. David is a distinguished combat veteran. We'll get into that too, who has seen firsthand what tyrannical governments can do to individuals and families. David's experience in Iraq, both in and out of combat, have shaped his views and philosophies on the proper role of government. David returned home after serving in the Marines, and he has been a committed gun rights activist for South Carolinians. David was his district's 2018 Libertarian Party candidate for the South Carolina House of Representatives before aligning himself with the Republican Party on a constitutionalist platform. He's steadfast in his commitment to securing the individual liberties of every American, and this is a promise that he will take to Washington. David is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He lives in his hometown of North Augusta, South Carolina, with his wife, Megan, and their son, Sammy. So having read that, and thank you for your service, and I'll get into what thank you. Well, let me stop right there. Some people object to folks like me saying to folks who have served in the military, thank you for your service. Instead of serving in the military, I served 41 years in law enforcement. That's twice what the average cop does. So I didn't go into the military. I served in a civilian fashion. I don't know what other people mean, but two questions with regard to that. Number one, David Weichel, are you offended when people come across you, distinguish that you have served, and say to you, thank you for your service? Does that offend you in some fashion?
No, it doesn't offend me. There are parts of my service that I'm not necessarily proud of because because of the things that we were doing as a nation and the things that I was a part of while serving our nation. But, I went in with full faith to serve country, to do my part for the war effort as it was. And while I may have become disillusioned about the war, it opened my eyes to liberty. It opened my eyes, like never before, to the great injustices that can be put on individuals, the smallest minority, by government. And so I'm proud of my service. I'm happy to receive those thanks, but I don't go out of my way to receive those thanks. I don't, wear a bunch of Marine Corps stuff to tell people, hey, I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran. I did 4 years in the Marines. I don't put that out there, generally speaking. But this is politics, and we do have to let people know this is kind of my record of service,
When I say thank you for your service, it's the kind of service that I mean when I speak with somebody in the law enforcement venue. And so when I say thank you for your service, and it's interesting that you pointed up some of those areas and some of the things that you did, I'm not speaking directly to what it is that individuals did, but what I am addressing is the fact that it takes courage, bravery, and sacrifice and discipline to enter the military, absent any of the other things that people may or may not have done while they were serving. So that's what I mean because I'm acknowledging those factors. Specifically, if you have a family, your family life can be damn near non-existent when you're serving in the military. So let me back up a little bit. I read your CV. That was provided by Cole. I'm sure there's more than that to your story. So what I'd like to do tonight in this order is go a bit more into your background, your schooling, those situations and persons who may have influenced you as you grew up, your education, jobs, experience, political alignments, and then finally into your platform, your thoughts, issues, what you believe you can do as senator for citizens of South Carolina and by extension, the United States. So first, David Weichel, when did you begin your candidacy for senator in South Carolina?
Well, I started looking into this late 2018, early 2019, because I realized at the end of the Kavanaugh hearings that Lindsey Graham was running for re-election.
Okay.
And I realized that because of the way he acted at the end of the Kavanaugh hearings. Now, for your listeners in California, you probably don't follow Senator Graham as well as we do here in South Carolina, and that's completely understandable. But Senator Graham has a record of kabuki, of political theater, where for the last 2 years of his Senate term, he will go and he will act like he's a constitutional conservative. He will act like he's all these things that appeal to Republicans and independents in South Carolina. And as soon as he's reelected, all those things go out the window. He is the epitome of a rhino, a Republican in name only. He doesn't keep any of those quote-unquote Republican values, those that constitutional conservatism that guides a lot of people in their politics. They go away the day that he's reelected. And so when I saw him act the way he did at the end of the Kavanaugh hearing, I knew that was the unofficial kickoff of his 2020 campaign. And I took about 6 months to build a small team behind the scenes and to figure out if it was something that I could do, see if it was something that seemed feasible. There was a lot of praying, a lot of talk with my wife and with others. And then last June, we made the announcement video and we put it out across social media.
I'm a political animal. I live and die by politics. So I remember the 10 minutes that Lindsey Graham took in that hearing where he took massive umbrage to how the Democrats were treating Justice or then Justice nominee Brett Kavanaugh. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's a very interesting point. We'll get to so much stuff. And again, thanks for being here for the entire hour, because as I indicate, we get to delve into lots of stuff. So let's start at the start. Where were you born? Where'd you go to school? And how did your upbringing or family life impact you today?
So I was born in Augusta, Georgia, which separates South Carolina. It's separated from South Carolina by the Savannah River. And that was where the closest hospital was. But I grew up mainly in rural Edgefield County, South Carolina. And I grew up on what was a dirt road for a good portion of that. I could walk up to my grandmother's house, maybe 100 yards from there. And I grew up, there was a range in my backyard, rifle range, pistol range, shotgun range, woods, small acreage, but, we had that. We had a garden. We had animals. We had fruit trees, things like that. And, again, small acreage. My dad was always working. He was a defense contractor. My mom took care of us, the kids. As time went on, the family became divided. And I ended up moving within our community to North Augusta. We did everything in North Augusta before that, because there was nothing where we were at. And I ended up going to school in North Augusta, graduated from North Augusta High School in 2005. But getting into something that influenced me, on Tuesday morning in September 2001, I was sitting in my first period freshman world history class. And as a lot of people, my generation, were you can remember where you were. I'm sure you remember where you were. And we found out that someone had attacked us, and we saw towers on fire. We saw the Pentagon on fire. And I saw, before I left that class, world history class in all places, I saw the first tower go down. And in the next period, I had Navy Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JRTC. And I saw the second tower fall. And I knew then, with my family's history of military service and civilian service, I knew that I was going to do everything that I could to go be a part of the war. At 14 years old, 14 years old. And, fast forward to 2004, November of 2004, I signed my contract with the Marines. I graduated from high school, turned to 18 before that, and shipped off to Paris Island August 2005. Did 4 years, went to Iraq for a portion of that. I was not a combat troop. When I say combat troop, I was not combat arms. For those of you that listeners in the Army, I was a pogue, but I was embedded with the infantry. Got to hang out with cool guys who do cool things. And I saw the occupation of Iraq, because that's what it was. It was an occupation. We were part of an army of occupation. And that affected everything in my life ever
since. You gave me an opening to go a lot of different places in just that last paragraph, and I think that speaks volumes. I'm looking at the chat room right now. There's a bunch of people in the chat room. One of the other people in chat, Simone, said, "What a great childhood," and she was reflecting on the fact that, hey, you guys had a range in your backyard. So already you're impressing a lot of the folks in chat. So I understand September 11th, 2001 came around. You were the age of 14. You enlisted at 17, actually went at 18. You experienced what you experienced in the Marine Corps. When you were in the Marine Corps, was there one thing that you wanted to do, or maybe in the Army, it's called an MOS, and I'm unfamiliar with the Marines. Do the Marines have an MOS, military occupational specialty?
Yes, we use slightly different codes, but I had two MOSs actually, 4341 and 4313, which doesn't make sense to most people, even Marines, because it was a small occupational field. It's a public affairs field.
Okay.
And so I went to the Defense Information School, Fort Meade, Maryland, where we train combat camera and we train journalists for the military, for each service. Each service goes there. The Coast Guard, the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force. And it has such distinguished alumni as Al Gore, Pat Sajak, and several others that I can't think of off the top of my head.
Okay.
And I trained as a journalist. I tell people I trained as a war reporter because I was trained as a basic public affairs specialist, writer at first for my primary occupational field. And then I went back to DENFOS to become a broadcaster. And so I learned everything when it came to print, internet, media, photography, all those things. The first time I was there at DENFOS, and when I went back, I had all those things already. And then I went forward for radio and television broadcasting because we have troops that have to record what we're doing overseas. Combat camera records things for posterity. And we have troops that have got to report the news in Germany. They've got to report the news in Iwakuni, Japan, and Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And I just happen to be one of those guys. Now, I hardly ever used my broadcasting skills, but it was something that I was trained for. Mostly I did a bunch of print news stories. Make guys look good for the papers back then.
You're going to use them now. This is one of the most primary questions that I would have for you tonight, and we'll get into more, of course. What motivates David Weichel? What makes you tick? What makes you get up in the morning, sir?
I am motivated to get up every morning, to do everything that I can to have a better world for my family, for me, and my son. And I look at all the things that are going on in the world, and I look at the things that our government's doing, and I look at the things that other governments are doing that might affect us. And I say, I have to do whatever I can to try and take care of my family, to make things better for my family, and to get my government under control.
Was there a specific moment in time that you can recall, David Weichel, when suddenly you realized, I'm not just casually interested in politics, I really want to get directly involved in politics?
Well, give you a little bit of background. I was a casual observer of politics. I voted. I had fights on Facebook and other social media for years. Would debate politics with people in real life, of course. But in 2016, leading up to the 2016 general election, I became part of what a lot of people call the meme war, the meme jihad, that took place, that was focused on one of two objectives, and sometimes they were the same. And the primary objective was to make sure that Hillary Clinton did not become president. And the secondary objective, for some people, was to meme Donald Trump into the presidency, to meme him into the White House. And so that's when I got really active in politics. You know, I was sharing out all sorts of memes about various candidates and against Hillary Clinton, obviously. And in the summer of 2017, after listening to Republican leadership at every level for a decade or more, with various promises that they had made to the American people, they were going to cut taxes, that they were going to cut business regulations, that they were going to secure the borders, that they were going to work with Donald Trump, was a late promise, that they were going to repeal Obamacare. I saw 6 months into Trump's presidency that they weren't going to do those things. And that's when I actually went and joined an official party. And that's when I actually joined the Libertarian Party, both at the national level, the state level, and actually, because of where I was in Aiken County, I actually formed the Aiken County Libertarian Party to help make it so that libertarians could be on the ballot in Aiken County again.
Okay, you opened a door, and somehow we connected mentally, because that was essentially the next question I was going to ask. David Weichel, you are running as a 2020 candidate for U.S. Senate as a Republican. You have a political history as a libertarian, so why the change?
It's not really a change for me, because, you know, while my party affiliation in the past was officially with the Libertarian Party,
okay,
before that, I voted for Republicans in almost every instance when there was a Republican on the ballot. But I'll tell you, there was an exception in 2014. That exception was Lindsey Graham. I did not vote for Senator Graham in 2014. I voted against him in the primary, and then I voted against him in the general election. Now, I didn't vote for a Democrat when I voted against a Republican. I voted third party, or I voted for myself. You know, I would never vote for someone that's worse than the person that I was voting against. And the reason that I was able to vote against Senator Graham the way that I did was because California is a solid blue state.
Yeah.
Because of your metropolitan areas. You've got a lot of red areas, but they're not as densely populated. Well, South Carolina is a solid red state with some streaks of blue and streaks of purple. But it's very easy for a Republican, especially at the federal level, to run and get elected in the general election, at least. And so, for me,
it's a strategy.
Well, no. I mean, part of it's a strategy. Part of it's the fact that in 2018, I was telling people, because I was running against another rhino for the state house. I told people I am running as what the Republicans claim to be about. I'm running on lowering taxes. I'm running on getting rid of regulations. I'm running on having less laws, and having those firearms freedoms that they claim that they support. And if you look at the Republican platform of, say, 10 years ago, and you look at how Republicans actually act today, you'll see that they're more like the Democrats of 10 years ago, of 20 years ago, than they are of what the Republican platform purports to be.
Okay,
and the things that I'm running on.
This may be the first. This may be the first of many. This tonight. When I do that, that means that you have just nailed a point directly home. 10 years ago, that would have been exactly right. As I said, the Republicans, I didn't leave the GOP. The GOP left me, so I understand exactly what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of libertarian views, I have to ask you this. Are you what I would term a big L libertarian or a little L libertarian? And the reason I ask that is, on the show here, for example, I call myself a conservatarian. I'm a conservative first, and I've got a little L libertarianism mixed in. I'm a big believer in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the First and Second Amendments, but where libertarians tend to lose me a little bit are in two venues where I have had workings, shall we say, the border and drugs. So I consider myself a libertarian, but a little L libertarian. Where do you kind of fit into the libertarian spectrum, if you will?
So, from my experience, when people say that they're a little L libertarian versus a big L libertarian, that deals with party affiliation. And so, a little L libertarian, an example of a little L libertarian would be someone like Rand Paul. Would be someone like Dr. Ron Paul when he was in Congress in the 2000s, versus Ron Paul in the 80s when he was actually a presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party.
Yes, he was.
There is no perfect libertarian. And what I say is I look at the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and it's a great document, perhaps one of the best documents when it comes to government. The problem is that governments are run by men, and men are imperfect, and men tend to foul things up because they're imperfect. The Bill of Rights, though, it recognizes natural rights that we have, and those natural rights, as they're recognized in the Bill of Rights, that's supposed to be a restriction on government at the federal level and the state level, because we, the people, are supposed to be supreme. We're supposed to be over government, as we are not supposed to be ruled. We were a nation of free men. We freed ourselves from the shackles of the crown, and why would we go and put ourselves back in shackles? I differ from some libertarians, but I favor returning to what I call free market immigration, like what we had in the 18th century and before that, where if people can come here, they can immigrate here. Now, I'm not saying that we can't set up some sort of system. This is getting into policy to do health and safety checks, because we can have people go to ports of entry. And beyond that, the drug war. I am a Mormon. Most people call me Mormon. I'm not going to use recreational drugs. I'm not going to use alcohol or anything like that. But I recognize prohibition in the 20s and the 30s did great damage to the American heartland. And part of that was because of government. There were people that died, people that were poisoned by government and by the will of government.
Folks,
so I just want to go ahead.
Folks, we're listening. I'm going to have to cut for a break. Folks, we're listening to David Weichel. He is a Republican running for U.S. Senator from South Carolina in 2020, and I'm very glad to have him tonight. We'll come back. Some people in the chat room already have questions for you, and so Let me give you this question first, then we'll take a break and we'll come right back. Jack in chat has said and asked you, if elected to the Senate, would you author an immigration reform bill that would secure the border and lower the bureaucratic nightmare and ever increasingly prohibitive costs of legal immigration? So cogitate on that just a bit. And again, we're talking to David Weigel. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away, folks.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty void in Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting live and direct from the SHR Media studios. Behind enemy lines in occupied California, that is always spelled with a K on this show for obvious reasons. Shockingly close to the locus of evil on the entire left coast. That is the Bill Mill, the Capitol building in Sacramento on 10th and L Streets. Tonight we have the luxury of speaking to David Weichel. He is the 2020 Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in South Carolina. He is running directly against Lindsey Graham, as he is wont to say on multiple social media posts. He is the anti-Graham, and I'm very pleased and very happy that he has decided to spend the entire time with us. You can find him. If you're on Facebook, go to facebook.com, Weichel for Senate, facebook.com, Weichel for Senate. If you happen to be on Twitter, you can find David Weichel at Weichel for Senate. Same thing, just on Twitter as opposed to Facebook. Weichel for Senate, at Weichel for Senate on Twitter. So before we took the break, David Weichel, one of the people in chat Jack asked, if elected to the Senate, would you author an immigration reform bill that would secure the border and lower the bureaucratic nightmare and ever-increasingly prohibitive costs of legal immigration? There's a really good reason for him asking this. I wish I had Jack here to tell you his story. It's lengthy. But Jack is from Australia. He has a radio show. He loves America. He loves it with all of his heart. He served in the Australian Army. He worked with United States soldiers. It was from working with them that he came to love the United States. He's been trying to get here literally for years, and it has cost him also literally thousands and thousands of dollars. When somebody can simply walk across the Rio Grande and get their ankles moist, and they're here. Bingo, we'll give you all the entitlements you can possibly want. So, any thoughts on the issue that Jack may have, David Weichel, sir? Are you there?
Yes, absolutely. We just have to recognize a couple of things first. First thing we have to recognize is that, yes, securing the border is important because right now there's the obvious military threat that we might have to deal with, terrorists sneaking into the country.
Okay.
But less recognized in a lot of ways is the fact that people that are crossing the border the way that they are right now are coming for basically three reasons. There's a triangle, I like to say, with people getting people to come across the border. Okay. There's, of course, the illegal trade of drugs. So you have the cartels that are pushing drugs across the border. You have the cartels that are smuggling people in. That's helping them to earn money. You have people that are coming here because while immigrants, both illegal and legal, cannot receive welfare benefits in most cases, their American-born children can. And we don't have to discuss how little or how big that amount is. The fact of the matter is that that's causing an issue. And then the third factor that we have to consider is the fact that there is another group of people, it's just an amorphous group of people, that are smuggling people into the country so that they can work kind of like they used to work in mine towns. Have them come work for you, have them stay at some place. Maybe you run it, or maybe your friend runs it, trailer park, something to that effect. And those people are working. They're not getting paid as much as they could if they were legally here. They're getting charged more in some cases for their housing because they have no legal recourse. And so we need to return to what I call free market immigration by doing a couple of things. We need to abolish the welfare state entirely. And it's not just the welfare state for the needy. That's not just the welfare state.
Exactly. Continue.
It's the welfare state for corporations. These subsidies that farmers receive, these subsidies that corporations receive. And of course, the worst form of welfare, in my opinion, welfare to foreign nations. Giving aid to foreign nations. That's not something that my tax dollars should be going towards. If people want to set up private networks to provide for the poor, to provide money to various different foreign nations, I say let them do that. But we should not have to do that as American taxpayers. The next thing that we have to do, because this is a triangle that we have to attack, we have to eliminate the drug war. We have to end the drug war. Not because, like I said, because I'm going to go out and shoot up heroin or smoke, marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it. Not because I'm going to just go pound whatever illegal drug they come up with next week. It's because while there are people that are being hurt by these drugs, there are people that are hurt by automobiles. There are people that are hurt by machinery. We need to have legal drug trade so that we don't have to worry about the cartels and their violence coming from Mexico to the United States. Because if you look at Prohibition in the 20s and the 30s, there was this extreme rise of crime, and people were doing crazy things to get booze. And it hurt more people than it helped. The drug war has hurt more people than it's helped, and it's cost us a lot of money. And it's hurting our nation. It's hurting our people. We need to end the drug war. And the final thing that we need to do, and this is tied to...
Can I stop you here? Can I stop you here just for a second as an interjection?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
If we stop the war on drugs, what you mean, I'd like to clarify just a bit. If you stop the war on drugs, does that mean that you're stopping the government interdiction of drugs? Is that what you're specifically talking about? Or are you talking about government's functional managing of drugs? And the reason I say that is because California just allowed lawful dope, as did California. And I can tell you for a fact, because I know someone very intimately involved with marijuana in California, that California couldn't sell ice cubes in hell. They have screwed up this in a major fashion, bigly. So to clarify, when you say stop the war on drugs, are you advocating the removal of government in terms of interdiction and management? So maybe clarify that a little bit for me, if you could, sir.
Yes. All right. So I know that some states have state-run package stores for alcohol and liquors. South Carolina is not one of them.
Okay.
South Carolina has its own backwards laws. But here's the deal. If someone wants to go and set up a liquor store in South Carolina and they lose money on it, the only person that's hurt by that is that store owner and whoever is associated with that store. It doesn't hurt the taxpayer, okay? I think that we need to stop the interdiction of drugs. I think if anything, if there should be any government role when it comes to drugs in this country, it should be something like with cannabis, for example. Cannabis should be treated like tomatoes. You should be able to buy the seeds for it. You should be able to buy the plants at Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever you buy your gardening supplies. Okay? And it should be no more, there shouldn't be any special taxes on it. It shouldn't be any more heavily regulated than a crop like tomatoes. When it comes to the harder stuff, like say cocaine, heroin, things like that, just have a regulatory agency that checks the batches to make sure that, hey, you know what, you're not sneaking in shards of glass into this product that you're selling people. I mean, we have similar inspections for things like tobacco. We have similar inspections for things like alcohols of various kinds.
Okay.
I think that if we have any sort of government intervention when it comes to drugs in America, that's probably the only proper rule. It's just safeguarding life and property rights. Beyond that, government should not have a role. They shouldn't run things because, yes, California can't sell ice cubes in hell. They can't sell weed. Who else can't sell weed? the Canadians who just legalized it across all of their provinces and territories. They lost $45 billion in, I believe, Ontario last year, and they just legalized weed.
Let me throw this out at you then. In terms of statistics, the best that I can tell, depending on who you talk to and which website you consult, CDC and other people indicate that anywhere from, say, 47,000 people to 70,000 people died of opioids last year. So to clarify again, what you're saying is the federal government shouldn't have anything to do with that. That whatever involvement should be utilized in terms of trying to stop opioids from killing people, are you indicating that that should be a state government role, or are you indicating that should not be a role of government in terms of state or federal government at all?
Honestly, here's the deal. The opioid crisis has been created by guys in lab coats. You know, you have people that I spoke to in 2018 that they were on certain opioids for years, certain pills for years,
okay,
and it helped to manage the pain. And then they got put on fentanyl. And fentanyl, as I'm sure you're aware, is a super opioid. It's the best word that I can come up with right now. It's something like 500 or 1,000 times more powerful than a pill, certain pills.
Right.
And it's crazy. And so you have doctors who get these people hooked on opioids, and I have people that I know that got hooked on opioids to the point where they got on a fentanyl patch because that was the first thing that they got put on, and then they're addicted. And they have to go to the pharmacy, the 24-hour pharmacy, at midnight, at 1 a.m., to get their prescription filled so that they can have that medicine, which is now an addiction. And it wasn't a guy on a street corner who was selling them a bad batch of weed. It wasn't some guy who was selling them heroin who got them hooked on it. It was a guy in a lab coat who put them on that.
Okay.
And beyond that, the fact is that people are going to heroin. They're going to these harder drugs because when their doctors cut them off, you make them go cold turkey, and you have someone who's actually in pain. And I've been at those points myself for various reasons. They have nothing to fall back on. They'll seek out anything that they can, any sort of treatment. And I haven't thought of that big thing, but I know that there are people that that's what they have to do in order to be able to function.
Okay. David Weichel, we only have 12 minutes left. The hour is almost here. I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but I would like to go back to Jack's question because Jack, again, is concerned about he's had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to try to become a legal immigrant into the United States of America. Is there anything that you were thinking in terms of advocacy that would assist him in terms of, do you have any thoughts, for example, of streamlining the lawful manner in which one can immigrate into the U.S.?
Yes, that's the third point that I want to hit on.
Okay.
So we in the drug war, we abolish welfare at all levels. You cut off a lot of that illegal immigration across the border right now. If you do that, there's less need for border barriers. And then beyond that, we do something very simple. At a port of entry, we allow someone, whether it's an individual or family, to apply for a shall issue visa. And that shall issue visa, I say shall issue, as in if you meet these very basic requirements that we have of you, we shall issue you a visa. If you come back with a clean background check, if you come back with a clean bill of health, we shall issue you a visa. And what we do is we just perform a basic health and safety check at the border, at that port of entry, whether it's in Mexico or whether it's in New York or LAX or wherever it may be, that port of entry. And that person or that family, whoever, that group, they pay whatever it costs in order to process that paperwork, whatever it costs to run those tests. And then they have a visa for 6 months, a year, whatever it may be. They have the ability to work and live inside the United States with paperwork. And then, of course, once you're here legally, it's a process of being here for a certain amount of time before you can gain American citizenship. There are tests involved. And so just making it so that people can come here legally and live here legally, at the cost of health and safety check, I think would make it a lot easier for your friend Jack to come from Australia and to live here in the United States and hopefully one day become an American.
One thing he would absolutely love to do. We got about 10 minutes left. What I'd like to do is go through a host of topics and get your thoughts and your opinions on them, and how you would advocate for these things for South Carolina and also for the United States. The first one that comes to mind is the U.S. military, and also in terms of budget. Any thoughts one way on the U.S. military? Grow it, shrink it, some thoughts.
We need to return to the militia system that we had in the 18th and the 19th century. This ties into gun rights. Every man, woman in the United States of America should be allowed to have arms. And at the state level, what can happen is we can encourage the states from the federal level to have regular training for the militia, whether it's combat first aid, whether it's basic infantry tactics, whatever that may be. Have people come out, get training from the National Guard in their respective states and territories, and then those people can then go out, equip themselves with whatever arms they need, with whatever medical supplies they need at their own cost, and then we can work towards eliminating the standing armies that we have, both across the world and in the United States of America, and return to the system that we had in the 18th and the 19th century, where we had a small army, we had a small navy that was only used as necessary, and can actually get to a point where the National Guards in various states and territories, the various naval militias, and of course the informal militia that is the people, can maintain national security, make it so that no army in the world can invade the United States of America right now with an untrained militia. Imagine what would happen if 150 million Americans were ready to rise up tomorrow to deal with Putin or the People's Republic of China if they landed troops in the United States of America.
Okay,
no
so
army could take it.
To clarify, you would advocate bringing essentially troops from abroad back into the United States, including airfields, navies, troops, sailors, etc., back to the U.S.
Correct.
Okay. All right. The other one, the economy in general, or the budget in general, the debt in general, the deficit in general in the U.S. We
need to cut all government spending at every level, but at the federal level especially, because we're running $1 trillion deficit. We have over $22.5 trillion of debt. There's more debt per taxpayer right now than the mortgage on my house, which is insane. A baby that's born today has nearly $70,000 worth of debt if you were to say this is your portion of the debt. And so what we need to do is we need to cut all federal spending. We need to find ways to start paying down the debt realistically, and portions of that will involve selling off federal assets. That will involve selling off federal lands to people who want to buy them. Maybe organizations like the Sierra Club. Maybe you want to buy 640 acres in the middle of the California desert for all I know. Whatever the case may be.
So a bit of privatization, or maybe a lot of privatization?
Well, what should happen, honestly, and this affects people in the West more than it does on the East Coast, is honestly all of those federal lands that are in mostly the West should be sold to the states, should be given to the states. And the states should then sell those lands to the people. They should be put up at auction so that the people can buy those lands, so people can manage those lands. Because look at our oceans. Our oceans are the most polluted places on Earth. And why is that? Because no one owns the ocean. No one goes to clean up the ocean because it's the tragedy of the commons. When we had open range laws all across the western United States, cattlemen would drive cattle all across the Midwest and across the rest of the country, and they would destroy the land. Their cattle would eat up everything, and then they would go and they'd sell them at the market, and it didn't cost them hardly anything when everything was said and done. When you force people to graze their cattle on their own land, it managed things better. They took better care of the land because they had to make sure that it lasted from season to season, from decade to decade. And that's what we need to do with all of our federal and eventually state lands.
David Weichel, Jack in chat right now, and I think you are congruent in your thinking. He asks another question. He says, so for David Weichel's idea of returning to the militia system, you would have to completely repeal the National Firearms Act. And is that something that you would advocate?
Yes, I actually have several hashtags going on for my campaign. My main slogan that people know me about is "Make Machine Guns Great Again." I want to repeal Brady, Hughes, the Hughes Amendment. I want to repeal the National Firearms Act and every other unconstitutional gun law, which is every gun law that's ever been written by the federal government, that's ever been written by state governments, that's ever been written by county governments, it's been written by municipalities. Your natural right to keep and bear arms is a natural right. Just like a dog has teeth and a porcupine has quills, you have that natural right of self-defense from tyranny and all lesser threats. And government does not have a right to dictate what you use to defend yourself. And it doesn't matter if that government is one person or if it's a democracy of 99 people voting against you, that one person, and you're right. You still have that right. And you just have to defend it at that point.
So, David Weichel, make sure that I have things correct. You are a massive supporter of the U.S. Constitution. You are a massive backer of the Bill of Rights. And I'm assuming all of the amendments that are concomitant in the Bill of Rights. We have 3 minutes left. First, I want to go back to your social media. Folks, if you want to find David Weichel for South Carolina, he's running for 2020 Senator, U.S. Senator of South Carolina. He's running specifically against Lindsey Graham. You can find him on Facebook, Weichel for Senate. That's Weikle, Weichel for Senate, Weikle for Senate. On Twitter, at Weichel for Senate. Very simple, very easy. Now we have about 2 minutes left. Can you give me, David Weichel, about a 1 minute summary, if you can, about what you stand for running against Lindsey Graham, please?
All right. I tell people that I am 100% pro-liberty, 100% pro-life, and 100% pro-gun. And like the 4 rules of firearm safety, if you violate any one of those 3, you violate all 3 of them. And so if something goes against liberty, then it goes against gun rights. It goes against life. If something goes against the life, it goes against those other 2, and so on and so forth. And so with my campaign, people ask me, are you going to support Trump in 2020? And I tell people, well, when he gets things right, I support the president. When he gets things wrong, I call him out.
Okay.
Because I'm 100% pro-gun. Gun rights are human rights, and our gun rights secure our liberty. And so that's why my slogan is "Make Machine Guns Great Again."
Okay. David Weichel, tell people where they can go specifically if they want to support you or donate to your campaign, please, sir.
Yes. Go to any of my social media on Facebook, on Twitter, and, of course, where I'm most active right now, Instagram. You look at Weichel for Senate, and there will be a donate link on each one of those. It's a pinned tweet on Twitter. It's a pinned comment somewhere else, and it's a link in my Instagram bio tomorrow.
Okay. All righty. Outstanding. David Weichel, 2020 Republican candidate, U.S. Senator, South Carolina. Sir, I have had a great time here tonight. Thank thank you for making your views clear, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself as well. Thank you again for staying up so late, sir. Thank you for your generous donation of time and exposition. We wish you all the best, and good night, sir. With this one caveat, David Weichel. Should you win U.S. Senator, I expect to hear you back here in the saloon talking to me.
Well, I tell you what, I have appreciated this chance to talk with you, to talk with your listeners, and you know how to get a hold of me. You know how to get me back on here. Between now and June, you can have me on again.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just may take you up on that, especially if stupid stuff caps off like it does every day here in the United States. David Weichel, sir, thank you very much for your time. God bless. Take care and be safe, and have a great sleep tonight, sir.
Thank you. God bless you and people of California.
Thank you, sir. That was David Weichel. And again, darn it, I just ran out of time. Sometimes I don't... See, I run into a wall. People want to talk in chunks of, say, maybe a half hour and an hour. Most people, especially because I'm a late-night radio show, folks will go for an hour, and then, it's midnight right now back on the East Coast. He's done. He's got to get some sleep. He's got a campaign to run. Every once in a while, I keep thinking to myself, I wonder what a real honest-to-goodness, like hour-and-a-half interview would sound like with a political candidate. Because, again, as per normal, I had literally 10 pages of questions. I got to maybe 4 pages of questions. But you know what? There's one thing you can always count on. I'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian, Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty void in Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. 1 hour already went quick like a bunny. For the first hour, I was speaking to David Weichel, who is running for U.S. Senator for South Carolina 2020. He is running against Lindsey Graham. You know how to donate. Go to his sites and send him some cash if you're thusly motivated. And again, to David Weichel, thanks for taking the time to be here. It was another late night thing. It's midnight. He hung up the phone. We were conversating back and forth. I'm sending texts and saying that the folks really enjoyed listening to him. And the chat room was very involved in that. Okay, we're going to have the Ron Edwards notebook. So, but when we come back, I guarantee that I have something you have never heard before.
Political, religious, and community activist leftists all over America proclaim they're for fairness. But when fairness is most needed, they suddenly get amnesia. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, for the second year in a row, a transgender wrestler has won the Texas Girls Class 6A 110-pound division. Mac Beggs, an 18-year-old senior from Euless Trinity High School near Dallas, was born a female and is taking testosterone as part of the transitional effort to switch to being a male. For the second time, she's becoming he has won the girls' division by defeating Chelsea Sanchez, who was born female. The problem is, now that Mac Beggs is utilizing testosterone, she becoming male is stronger than those born female. Even Beggs has stated that he would prefer competing against male wrestlers. But the rules for Texas government high schools require athletes to compete under the gender of their birth. Ordinarily, that is great. But with young people being allowed to pick and choose another gender, that can lead to twisted situations, like almost boy wrestlers unfairly defeating female wrestlers. I'm Ron Edwards. Check out my new website, theronedwards.talkspot.com.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I came across this, and you need to hear it. It is the Heavy Dub Divider Jignesh remix of our great friend Greta. I want you to get into it like I am. Oh, yeah. Get your industrial dance groove going, baby. Here it comes. Here comes Greta. Just for you. How dare you? Yeah. Come on. Bob your head.
How dare you? This is all wrong.
Yeah.
How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you?
The look on her face that could kill. A 16-year-old who was ignored by President Trump at the UN. If looks could kill, when President Trump deigned to walk
This is all wrong.
on by.
I shouldn't be up here.
You
I should
shouldn't.
be back in school.
Yes, you should.
On the other side of the ocean.
Yes. Do it.
Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Get your groove on.
How dare you?
How dare you? Come on.
How dare you?
I'm watching you. You're not dancing. How dare you not dance? Bet you never heard that one before, did you? I haven't done this for a while, and I've got a ton of them. I'm going to do this one right now, and then I'm going to move on to other things. Lots of audio cuts, but
It's time for happy stories and good times.
here's a story from the Washington Examiner that I bet you didn't hear. This just came out. U.S. Attorney, I love this part. What's the difference between Bobby Mueller and just about anybody else versus the guy that you haven't heard crap from, U.S. Attorney John Durham? Haven't you been wondering? Simone in chat. Simone in chat says, are you mocking her? And to me, it's just, wait, you know, if I had a producer, what you would have heard is, are you mocking her? So I listen, I don't have a producer, so that's not what you heard. Greta, it makes me wonder.
You're a loony.
Greta?
You're a loony.
Are you?
You're a loony.
Okay, Greta, maybe you are. Alrighty, moving right along. Here's this story from Washington Examiner. U.S. Attorney John Durham is looking into Ukrainian involvement in the 2016 election. Stop. Everyone thinks this story these days is about Joe Biden, and the Democrats are making it about Joe Biden. But it's truly about 2016 Ukrainian involvement in that election. So let me ask you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of the jury, is it unlawful for an American president to ask another country to do an investigation into something like this? Simone says, I was table dancing. Okay. And the question is, obviously, no, but because nothing has stuck to the Teflon Don, the Democrats continuously insist on nailing Jell-O to a tree. The Justice Department revealed that U.S. Attorney John Durham, picked by Attorney General William Barr to look into the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation, is also investigating whether Ukraine was involved in any 2016 elections. Imagine that. And then I said this on my Tuesday show, and I will reiterate again. Mark this crap on your calendars. September 24th is the day that the Democrat Party started taking a major dump, because this person decided to say, well, this. Let's see. Can you go now? Nope, she's not going to go. She's going to make me refresh things, I bet. Yeah. Don't you hate it when you have things queued up and all of a sudden they just don't go? Here they go. Who can be impeached? Well, all right. It's not working. Let's move on. One of the other things that people are not necessarily saying is that the whistleblower had no direct knowledge of Trump's telephone call. It was just hearsay. So I'm kind of curious how that can be a whistleblower situation in the first place. The anonymous White House whistleblower suggesting President Donald Trump had an inappropriate conversation with a foreign power now known to be Ukraine reportedly made that claim based on hearsay. Fox senior analyst Brit Hume noted on Saturday how CNN admitted that the political firestorm is all based on a whistleblower thought to be a White House intelligence agent with what turns out to be, second-hand information. This is confirmed also by Fox News. Source says whistleblower didn't have first-hand knowledge of the Trump call with the Ukraine president. And also, as I said on Tuesday, I will reiterate here, I'm going to leave the Ukraine issue and come back to it with some audio cuts because there were some interesting audio cuts that occurred in the past couple of days. But I said this Tuesday, and I'll say this again. Greg Jarrett happened to state on Tuesday, and I completely believe it, the president is duty-bound under the Take Care Clause of the Constitution. If he happens to know of a potentially corrupt act by a vice president, in addition to the 2016 interference in the election by Ukraine, trying to extort a foreign country to shut down a probe that involves his son, then the president is duty-bound to ask that foreign country to investigate and to produce the evidence. If that president doesn't, then it's dereliction of duty from that president, and it's his constitutional duty. Now, I want to go aside here for a second. Let me tell you this. I'm in the process of just a programming note. November 8th, which I believe is Tuesday offhand. I don't have a calendar in front of me. November 8th, I'm going to have Andrew Pollack on the show. I just confirmed this. Andrew Pollack wrote the book about Meadow. This is his daughter who was slain at Parkland. And Andrew Pollack has much to say that we need to hear about his daughter Meadow, about what happened at Parkland, and what an abortion on toast that entire situation was, screwed up from the get-go before that situation by Broward County. And everyone knows that I'm a great supporter of law enforcement when law enforcement allows me to be. So a quick programming note. November 8th, mark it down in your calendars. I'm going to have Andrew Pollack on the show to talk about his book, What Happened to Meadow, for the entire first hour. You got to be here for that. Now, you've heard me have two people on the show separately. Kurt Schlichter, an article of his I'm going to be reading in just a moment, and author Matthew Betley, who is a suspense author. Now, Matthew Betley has served in the Marine Corps. Kurt Schlichter retired as a U.S. Army colonel. It turns out that they're both good friends. As a matter of fact, that's how I got Kurt Schlichter onto the show, is Matt Betley recommended me to him. So this is what I'm trying to get together if I can. It might be a little tough. I want to get Matt Betley and Kurt Schlichter on the show for an hour. Just two guys, military veterans, conservative people on the right who are celebrities in their own right, on the show in a conference call, riffing back and forth between life and politics. And if they just happen to throw some alcohol into it, well, number one, that won't happen because Matthew Betley can't have any. But if we throw the appearance of alcohol into it, into the saloon, and mix liberally with some serious riffing back and forth, I think that could potentially be a great show that I'm hoping that maybe if they enjoy it a lot, they'll want to come back and maybe do it again. two military conservatives going back and forth together, I think that could make some great damn radio. Some great late-night damn radio. Now, I think, and I said this Tuesday, that the Democrats, have gone out of their way to shoot Joe Biden in the foot. And I believe that Joe Biden is, because of this, and the focus that was supposed to be on OMB is now going to be as much, if not more, on Joe Biden himself. I think Joe Biden is done. He's toast. Who will step into the ring to replace Joe? I suspect it's going to be Elizabeth Warren. That may be my new future Elizabeth Warren voice. Here's an article that just came out today by Kurt Schlichter. Imagine that. He seems to agree with me. The article is entitled, "The Smoke Signals Say It'll Be Trump versus Warren." Elizabeth Warren is on the way to securing the Democrat nomination, and the ensuing general election battle will be a rerun of Little Bighorn, except, ironically, sitting Bolshevik will be Custer. Trump's going to her to drag her, kicking and screaming and nagging, always nagging, down the trail of tears until that glorious November night when Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and maybe Minnesota all express their reservations over sending this tiresome scold to the White Wigwam in Washington. Oh, are you a true conservative who gets the sads at this Mohican mockery? Too bad, you sissy submissives. You've not seen the last of it. Certainly not by Kurt Schlichter, or maybe even me. Not by me. Not by a long shot. We battle cons are never going to get tired of rubbing her cheesy ethnic appropriation in her pale face. And nor will Donald Trump. Soon, not senile Joe will be out of the way, and yeah, rickety polling aside, in part thanks to Trump's Ukrainian briar patch play, Hairplug 1 is headed for the unhappy hunting grounds. And once he's gone, the bad orange man, or as BZ says, OMB, is going to start pounding Hackajawea, and he's not going to stop until he's secured 4 more years. I tell you, it's hard to read a Kurt Schlichter article because I want to laugh, but I can't. It's not moderately amusing tribe jibes that are going to do in her candidacy. Elizabeth Warren faces some other challenging obstacles on her way to the Oval Office. Foremost among them is Elizabeth Warren. Where Kirsten Gillibrand came across as America's first wife, Warren comes across as that irritating middle school librarian who is constantly demanding that we all use our inside voices, and who puts up posters that say, "Reading is cool," with a picture of the Fonz. Functionaries like that are just fine for keeping 7th graders from burning down the school and for passing out tomes to the kids to learn them from their ciphering, but grown men and women neither need nor want some national nag pestering them to be better people. For one thing, we're already manifestly better than the cast of weirdos, losers, and pinko mutations that make up Warren's motley base. At least Joe Biden seems to know how to deal with normal people, or at least he did before he began his Botoxed strange-o act over the last few months. Regardless, the regular guy act was always a front. The real Joe Biden is just another DC insider who plowed the field for his ultra-achiever son, Snorty, to occupy a seat on some Ukrainian oligarch's gas company at north of $50,000 a month when he wasn't face-planted in a heap of Bolivia's best and or working his brother's widow. You did know that Hunter Biden was screwing his brother's widow, right? Now you do. But at least Gropey J could fake being a guy you might conceivably have a beer with. When Warren starts talking about having a beer, it's enough to make you give up drinking. She makes me repelled by the thought of a cold, frosty brew, cold turkey inspired by a cold turkey. This is not a great candidate. And she's from Massachusetts, for Pete's sake. For 50-plus years, the state with the Dropkick Murphys soundtrack has produced a nonstop series of electoral losers. Anybody remember Mike Dukakis? Anybody? He managed to lose because someone told him he'd look butch in a tank. John Kerry, sheesh, he managed to lose to W. Oh, and who can forget Mitt Romney, that Irish setter tormenting freedom nerd, I'm sorry, FredoCon nerd, managed to lose to Candy Crowley even before he lost to Barack. I bought a mansion by the seashore because climate change is a hoax, Obama. The last guy from Boston who pulled it off was JFK, but at least he had scoring with Marilyn Monroe going for him. Oh my God, do you realize I almost said Marilyn Manson? Okay, that's not funny. Move on, BZ. Maybe the Democrat base thinks that after losing with their last unlikable shrew, the shrews are due. But Elizabeth Warren is not so uniquely unlikable to normal Americans. You know, ones who don't wonder about blue coastal cities introducing themselves with their pronouns. That this would be a McGovern-esque route if states like California, New York, and the cold one up in the corner with the maple syrup weren't so full of idiots. The fight is going to come down to a handful of states that liberals typically fly over and that are filled with people liberals despise. You know, the people who actually do the work that keeps us warm, fed, and safe. Oh yeah, those are the enemies of the Democrat Party. It says a lot that, in fact, the big chief Warren taught at Harvard, albeit solely because of her Apache at scam, is not the thing that will alienate her most from Midwestern voters. It's her insane catering to the commie contingent in her midst. It's one thing to try to get to the left of the Democrat field during the primaries. It's another to get to the left of the Democrat field during the primaries when you're running against Bernie Sanders. So let's review. Open borders? Check. Confiscate your guns? Check. Raise your taxes? Check. Take your doctor? Check. Abortion until the kid can draw his Social Security? Check. These are not the positions a serious contender outside of a Brooklyn coffee house or an Ivy League faculty lounge adopts. Then there's her promise to ban fracking. Hear that, all you voters in Western PA and thereabouts. Listen up. Because she chose the weird weather cultists over you, you get to tell your families that instead of your six-figure jobs helping America be energy independent, you all get to be impoverished again. But hey, ruining your lives is a small price to pay for the smug satisfaction of our elite liberal betters that they'll get knowing they pleased Gaia's pig-tailed earthy manifestation, Greta Thunberg. That's her name. I couldn't think of it. Greta Thunberg. Your livelihoods or the catering to the obsessions of a Swedish 16-year-old. Hey, for Liz Warren, that's an easy call. Better learn to code. Actually, don't even bother. Elizabeth Warren may get nominated. In fact, it looks like she will. But when she and her running mate, be it the gun-grabbing, furry Willie Brown's firing or Mayor Liberal Lithgow from Footloose, Indiana, enter the general, Trump is going to be waiting. He's got money. Oodles of it. He's got results. Among them, that we all have more money and jobs and no new wars. And he's got the killer instinct to scalp the competition. Let's hope that for the sake of a viable two-party system, this will be the Democrat Party's radical left's last stand. That's by Kurt Schlichter. Another programming note. Let's put this over here. Another programming note. Next, I hoped to have Kurt Schlichter and Matthew Betley. I'm waiting. Matthew Betley got back to me. I'm waiting for Kurt Schlichter. I'm hoping to have them on next Tuesday night. Next Thursday night, I'm having another 1 hour electoral fest in terms of I am having the Libertarian candidate for President of the United States 2020 on. The gentleman's name is Adam Kokesh, Kokesh, and he will be on. Now, I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking. You may think I don't, but I do. I want to hear as many people as I can on the show, if for no other reason than to make sure that their views and platforms are known to people so that folks can make an informed decision as to who appeals. I've had some libertarians on. I had a Democrat running for president. I had a Republican running for senator tonight with a libertarian background. I'm going to have a libertarian running for president next Thursday night. Tuesday is up in the air, but I want to hear as many voices in the saloon for you so that you can make informed decisions when it comes to next year, November of 2020. And with that,
conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
the new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Again, one of those nights where I say, where did the time go? Where did the hour go for David Weichel? Where did the first half hour go with Kurt Schlichter? Now I'm going to ask where the second half hour went in the second hour. Because I'm going to read an article by Victor Davis Hanson. Here's the deal. Victor Davis Hanson teaches at Fresno State, and Fresno State is 4 hours south of where I am in the studio in Sacramento. There's no damn reason in the world that I shouldn't be able to have Victor Davis Hanson on my show. We are brothers in being behind enemy lines. He's a highly educated, highly intelligent individual that I just have to get on the darn show. But I've not been able to find, you can find that little crack, that crevice, the way in to try to contact someone. I haven't quite found the right inroad to get VDH on the show. I'm working on that. I'm working on a ton of stuff. I'm even working on Joe Wamba again. He doesn't know it. I'm already at no. Frequently I get to yes. Victor Davis Hanson just came out with this article today, September 26th. It's called The Death of American Citizenship. And as I indicated in chat, I want to know if you agree with this. Victor Davis Hanson writes, the American founders institutionalized the best of a long Western tradition of representative government with the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights. These contracts outline the rare privileges and responsibilities of new American citizens. Yet the concept of citizenship is being assaulted on the pre-modern side by the legal blending of mere residency with citizenship. Estimates of the number of undocumented American residents range from 11 million to more than 20 million. Stop. I've heard that it's actually more than 20 million. I would not be surprised. The undocumented are becoming legally indistinguishable from citizens and enjoy exemption from federal immigration law in some 500 sanctuary jurisdictions. An illegal resident of California will pay substantially less tuition at a California public university than a U.S. citizen of another state. Let that sink in. Multiculturalism has reduced the idea of e pluribus unum, from many, one, to a regressive tribalism. Americans often seem to owe their first allegiance to those who look like they do. Citizens cannot even agree over once hallowed and shared national holidays such as Christmas, Thanksgiving, and the 4th of July. Is Victor Davis Hanson correct on this? I think you know my answer. It's eerie how many current American retribalization resembles the collapse of Rome as Goths, Huns, and Vandals all squabbled among one another for what was left of 1,200 years of Roman citizenship, eager to destroy what they could neither create nor emulate. Citizenship has always been protected by the middle classes on the idea that they are more independent and self-reliant than the poor, but can stand up to the influence and power of the elite. Biden. Undocumented children become Americans before a lot of Americans become Americans. Yet until recently, we had seen a decade of stagnant wages and entire regions ossified by outsourcing, offshoring, and unfair global trade. Historically, with the demise of the middle class, so follows the end of constitutional government. But citizenship also faces a quite different and even greater postmodern threat. Many of our coastal elites see nothing much exceptional in America, past and present. They prefer the culture and values of a European Union without worrying that the EU's progressive utopian promises have been wrecked by open borders, economically stultifying regulations, and unapologetic and anti-democratic efforts to curb free expression and local autonomy. Often such citizens of the world mentalities feel shame over the origins and traditions of America. Transnational organizations and accords on climate, criminal justice, and human rights are seen as superior to their American counterparts. A new progressive iconoclasm seeks to destroy statues, rename streets and buildings, and wipe away art that does not reflect more global values. Does voting, the bedrock right of the democratic citizen, matter that much anymore? In California, tens of thousands of votes were harvested by paid campaign operatives. There was also abuse in state agencies in sending out voter registration forms to those who were not legally entitled to vote. Imagine that in California. Spell it with a K. Lone activist federal judges frequently overturn legislation and referenda they find contrary to their own political take on legal theory, without worrying that the votes of millions are canceled in a nanosecond. Meanwhile, the proverbial swamp of the bureaucratic, administrative, and regulatory state is so vast and unaccountable that a few clerks can harass entrepreneurs, issue edicts with the force of legislation that ruins lives, or indict, regulate, or audit a targeted individual into legal bankruptcy. In recent years, we've seen a cake maker, a video maker, and a national security advisor so hounded by federal bureaucrats that they either were nearly bankrupted, ended up in jail, or were reduced to penury through legal costs. We still have a Bill of Rights, but many of our constitutional protections are being rendered impotent. If a rural family cannot find ammunition at the local Walmart or gun store due to organized boycotts and threats of such establishments, then the constitutional right to bear arms is not always exercisable in a practical sense. Brett Kavanaugh was nominated, audited, and confirmed by the Senate as a Supreme Court justice. But if the New York Times and cable news can relentlessly charge, without proof, that nearly 40 years ago he was a teenage sexual pervert, then a distinguished judge can be rendered impotent without legal impeachment. If a student cannot safely express opposition to abortion on demand, question the global warming narrative, or object to safe spaces, trigger warnings, and race-based theme houses on campuses, does it matter that there is in theory still a First Amendment? Victor Davis Hanson says, "We are unwinding at both ends. Tribalism, the erosion of the middle class, and de facto open borders are turning Americans into mere residents of a particular North American region between Mexico and Canada. Yet, even more dangerously, thanks to the fiats of unelected bureaucrats and officials, along with the social media lynch mobs who boycott, harass, and shame us, our constitutional rights are now increasingly optional. They mostly hinge on whether we are judged worthy by an unelected, politically correct, and morally righteous elite. In theory, American citizenship remains the same. In reality, Victor Davis Hanson writes, it is disappearing fast." So, agree or disagree with Victor Davis Hanson? I completely agree. Damn it, I got to get him in the saloon. Today, we had Senator Ratliff from, Representative John Ratliff speak to an individual named McGuire who was the IG regarding the whistleblower. And so Ratliff talks to the acting he's the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, about the whistleblower complaint. So this is a House Intelligence Committee hearing on the whistleblower disclosure today that occurred.
Good to see you again, sir.
You served in the Navy 36 years. You commanded SEAL Team 2, and you retired as Vice Admiral of the Navy, correct?
This is John Ratliff.
That's correct, Congressman.
All right. And despite the fact that after that service, you became acting DNI 23 days after the Trump-Zelensky call and 4 days after the whistleblower made his or her complaint, you were subpoenaed before this committee after being publicly accused of committing a crime, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
Chairman Schiff wrote a letter on September 13th accusing you of being part of a, quote, unlawful cover-up, and then the Speaker of the House took it one step further. She went on national TV and said not once but twice that you broke the law, that you committed a crime. She said, the acting director of national intelligence blocked him, meaning the ICIG, from disclosing the whistleblower complaint. This is a violation of the law.
Listen carefully.
You were publicly accused of committing a crime. You were also falsely accused of committing a crime. As you have so accurately related, you were required to follow not just an opinion of what the law is, but the opinion from the Justice Department, an 11-page opinion about whether or not you were required by law to report the whistleblower complaint, correct?
That's correct, Congressman Wright.
And that opinion says, the question is whether such a complaint falls within the statutory definition of urgent concern that the law requires the DNI to forward to the Intelligence Committee. We conclude that it does not. Did I read that accurately?
Yeah.
I better have, right? That's an opinion not from Bill Barr. That's an opinion from the Department of Justice ethics lawyers, not political appointees, but career officials that serve Republicans and Democrats, the ethics lawyers at the Department of Justice that determined that you did follow the law. So you were publicly accused, you were also falsely accused, and yet here today, I haven't heard anything close to an apology for that.
And you
welcome
won't
to
ever.
The House of Representatives with Democrats in charge. Let me turn to the matter that we're here for. A lot of talk about this whistleblower complaint. The question is, at this point, given what we have, why all the focus on this whistleblower? The best evidence of what President Trump said to President Zelensky is a transcript of what President Trump said to President Zelensky.
And released.
I'm not casting aspersions on the whistleblower's good faith or their intent, but a secondhand account of something someone didn't hear isn't as good as the best evidence of what was actually said. And to that point,
stop. In a court of law, hearsay is not allowed. I know that. I served 41 years in law enforcement. It would be considered specious bullshit and disallowed at the first attempt.
Despite good faith, the whistleblower is in fact wrong in numerous respects. And I know everyone's not going to have time to read the whistleblower's complaint, but the whistleblower says that I am deeply concerned, talking about the president, that there was a serious or flagrant problem, abuse, or violation of the law. Whistleblower then goes on to say, I was not a direct witness to the events described. However, I found my colleagues' accounts of this to be credible. And then talking about those accounts of which this whistleblower complaint is based on, the whistleblower tells us the officials that I spoke with told me, and I was told that, and I learned from multiple U.S. officials that, and White House officials told me that, and I also learned from multiple U.S. officials that. In other words, all of this is secondhand information. None of it is firsthand information.
None of it is direct
The whistleblower
evidence.
then goes on to cite additional sources besides those secondhand information. Those sources happen to include mainstream media. The sources that the whistleblower bases his complaints on include the Washington Post, the New York Times, Politico, The Hill, Bloomberg, ABC News, and others. In other words, much like the Steele dossier, the allegations in the whistleblower's complaints are based on third-hand mainstream media sources rather than first-hand information.
This crap never
The whistleblower
stops.
also appears to allege crimes not just against the president, but says, with regard to this scheme to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 election, that, quote, the president's personal lawyer, Mr. Rudolph Giuliani, is a central figure in this effort, and Attorney General Barr appears to be involved as well. But buried in a footnote, a couple of pages later, the whistleblower admits, I do not know the extent to which, if at all, Mr. Giuliani is directly coordinating his efforts on the Ukraine with Attorney General Barr. Attorney General does know because he issued a statement yesterday saying there was no involvement. My point in all of this is, again, the transcript is the best evidence of what we have, and so that the American people are very clear what that transcript relates is legal communications. The United States is allowed to solicit help from a foreign government in an ongoing criminal investigation, which is exactly what President Trump did in that conversation. So if the Democrats are intent on impeaching the president for lawful conduct, then be my guest. I yield back. Admiral, good to see you.
Yes, and yes. And for those of you who just tuned in, yes. Now let's hear from Representative Matt Gaetz about the situation. And I believe now, who is he talking to? I can see her face, but I can't think of her name offhand. Let's listen.
We're not against transparency. What we're against is this notion that, like, it's impeach first, investigate later. You heard Nancy Pelosi, despite calling this an inquiry, definitively issue the verdict that she believes that Donald Trump violated his oath of office. She got basically catfished into a politically fatal impeachment endeavor that is going to motivate the Republican base, and it is going to expose Democrats for being so consumed with their feelings about Donald Trump that they don't deliver on results for the American people on the issues that I think motivate folks to get out and vote and back candidates.
Let me ask you this. Folks that are listening live in the chat room, doing all this, going for impeachment, will this make you want to vote for President Trump in 2020 or against President Trump in 2020? With me, I will most definitely be voting for. But isn't it funny how, it's weird, it's strange, how things change with the passage of time. But again, as I'm always happy to reveal, the internet has a memory, even if the Democrats don't.
Quite properly, that an impeachment of a president
This is Jerry Nadler.
Is an undoing of a national election. And one of the reasons we all feel so angry about what they are doing is that they are ripping from us, they are ripping asunder our votes. They are telling us that our votes don't count.
Right. Over Clinton.
And
Bill
that
Clinton.
the election must be set aside.
They are driven by hatred. They hate Bill and Hillary Clinton so much they will stop at nothing.
Hillary, yes.
Oh, but they got another thought coming.
This is Mad Max.
They thought that Bill Clinton was just going to fold up his tent and go home. Oh, but Hillary said, oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
They hate impeachment.
Hillary said, Bill, you go out there and do the people's business. She said, Bill, I don't care what they say. You go out there, the polls show everywhere. The people like the work that you're doing. You go on out there and do the people's work, and I'll take care of you later.
And who knows where your penis falls in the meantime? Bill Clinton. Democrats hate impeachment.
Thank you. Today, the Republican majority is not judging the president with fairness, but impeaching him with a vengeance.
Oh, wait, this is Nancy Pelosi. Again, she hates impeachment.
In the investigation of the president, fundamental principles which Americans hold dear, privacy, fairness, checks and balances, have been seriously violated. And why?
Really?
Because we are here today because the Republicans in the House are paralyzed with hatred of President Clinton, and until the Republicans free themselves of this hatred, our country will suffer. I rise to...
Yeah, just substitute Republicans for Democrats all through what you're hearing, and, well, the Democrats obviously hate impeachment.
To oppose these unfair motions which call for the removal of the President of the United States from office, and in doing so wish to point out some differences between the investigation of the President and the investigation of Newt Gingrich. The first principle in our investigation of Newt Gingrich was that at the moment we found exculpatory information, it would be reported immediately to the accused and be made public. The independent counsel knew that the president was exonerated when Travelgate, Whitewater, and Filegate, and he held that information until the hearing, indeed until after the election. This was not fair. Indeed, it is the responsibility of any prosecutor to immediately release information that is exculpatory.
This is their president we are talking about. The President of the United States does not serve...
Wait. This is Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, a Judiciary Committee member. He hates impeachment.
At the pleasure of the legislature. does not serve at the pleasure of Joe Biden, does not serve at the pleasure of Henry Hyde, does not serve at the pleasure of the Congress, as a prime minister does in a parliamentary system. He is elected directly by the people of the United States of America. And the election of a president is the only nationwide vote the American people will ever cast. And that's a big deal. The American people don't think that they have made a mistake by electing Bill Clinton
or Donald John Trump.
And we in Congress had better be very careful before we upset their decision and make darn sure that we are able to convince them, if we decide to upset their decision, that our decision to impeach him was based upon principle and not politics.
And that, you see, was a warning to Republicans back then in 1994. This is Representative Andy Biggs from Arizona. And I believe it also includes Representative Matt Gaetz on the, let's just call it an inconsistency with the whistleblower complaint and what turns out to be actual Democrat harassment of Donald Trump.
Coup attempt that started with the Russian investigation. It's continuing on now, and there is nothing truthful about what Adam Schiff said today in his opening remarks in that hearing. They were outrageous, and they were designed to mislead this public. And you know, it is outrageous what's happening to the President of the United States with these people who won't give it up.
And a president who is setting new standards for any president in achievement, in policy, and results.
Our president's a fighter. I've got to say,
Matt
Lou,
Gaetz.
to the whole country, I'm grateful that the House Freedom Caucus is going to be led by a great fighter, and Andy Biggs. He is going to ensure that we continue to make sure that the Republican conference doesn't roll over to some of the special interests that have polluted this town. Speaking of polluting this town, there are a group of people at the top of kind of their own self-aggrandized intelligentsia of Washington who fundamentally believe that they can substitute their judgment for the American people. They were totally humiliated in the Russia hoax for this just absurd distraction for the country, and I cannot believe the gall that now you would have Nancy Pelosi engaged in impeachment by reflex before the evidence comes out, before it can be tested. And you know what? The reporting today is starting to show that this third and fourth hand accounting that we see in the whistleblower report, a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of things that are false. We can't wait to get in there and show what's really going on.
And that's the truth. What happened is this. Nancy Pelosi, because of pressure from the Squad and other huge left Democrat, socialist, communists, decided that she was going to pull the impeachment trigger. September 24th, 2019. So what happens when the Senate kills it? Or even what happens if it does pass? You have just, as I said on Tuesday, and I will continue to say, you have just created an OMB martyr monster of the first magnitude. Hey, you know what? Way to go, Democrats. Way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelins Berserk Bobcat Saloon, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and also by Pratt & Whitney Engines. Thrust, you can trust. Tiaras by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team with whom I shall be consorting in less than an hour. Thanks tonight for David Weichel for his appearance in the show for the entire first hour. Thanks to you for listening live. Thanks to everybody in chat. Thanks for everybody who listens in podcast, to all the American truckers who support you. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for taking time out of your busy day to listen to me. A lot of people listen to me straight for 2 hours. Okay, you're cleaning your fish tank, so what? Have a great weekend. God bless. You take care. Be safe. Come back on Tuesday.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night.
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.